Hello, welcome to the Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 21, Survey Design. And we are discussing survey research designs. And our design is descriptive designs. There are two types of descriptive designs, namely cross-sectional designs and coherent designs. The first one is cross-sectional designs. In a cross-sectional design, the data is collected at one point in time. This is the most frequently used and most fundamental design in social survey research and is sometimes called single-shot survey. This design is most appropriate for making inferences about the characteristics of the population from which the sample is drawn and inferences about the relationship between variables that at point in time at which data is collected. The interviewing for such studies is sometimes carried out in less than a week, but more typically requires a few weeks and in some cases a few months. For example, a survey of current people's choices of a political party is a cross-sectional survey. A researcher might use the data either to describe a sample on one variable or a number of variables or demonstrate the association between these variables. Consider the following example. A researcher is interested in exploring the attitudes of the parents on the education of their children. He selects a sample of households with school-going children in a community, maybe rural or urban, and interviews the parents in those selected households. After the interviews are completed, the researcher analyzes the data and draws conclusions. The research design involved here is a cross-sectional design. One of the advantages of this design is that a researcher can classify a sample into many quite different subgroups to explore the separate dimensions of the research topic. A researcher may also use this design in causal analysis. Interestingly, by asking questions about the past, it is possible to study certain longitudinal or over the time social phenomena such as social mobility using a cross-sectional design. However, the cross-sectional designs have two important limitations. It is difficult to establish the time order of the variables, and it is difficult to analyze the change over time. To illustrate the first point, suppose in the study we find that the organizational affiliation is associated with political efficacy, feelings that one can influence the political system. The question arises as to whether our respondents first joined organizations and later came to feel efficacious because of their experiences in that organization, or whether they felt efficacious first, which led them to join a particular organization. Alternatively, whether both causal sequences are operating either for different people or for the same people. If we gathered data at one point in time, it is difficult to know when differences on each variable developed. Since causes come before effects, it is difficult to know in a cross-sectional design which variable should be taken as independent casual agent. A second limitation of the cross-sectional design is that it is difficult to use it for analyzing changes over time. Consider the analysis of voting behavior. At any given point during an election, we can ask respondents how they would vote if the elections were held today. However, voting decisions might change during a campaign, and different voters may exhibit different patterns of change. Some know their choice from the beginning and never vary. Some switch back and forth between candidates. Some are undecided until election day. Moreover, people who decide early in the campaign and never waver may have different characteristics and may experience different pressures than people who decide late. In sum, data collected at one time make it difficult to understand social processes that occur over time. The second design is cohort design. These forward-looking or perspective designs provide data about changes in a specific population. Suppose a survey of the aspirations of athletes participating in the 1996 Olympics is given in 1996, 2000 and 2004. This is a cohort design and cohort is 1996 Olympics. Cohort designs can also be retrospective or look back over time. A historical cohort, if the events being studied actually occurred before the onset of the survey. For example, suppose a group of persons was diagnosed 10 years ago with disease X. If you survey their medical records at present time, you are using a retrospective cohort. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self-learning podcast.